Before we begin, I'd like to say if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell button, because YouTube isn't showing my subscribers when my videos are going up, which is absolutely brilliant. Thank you, YouTube. And also, if you want to give me a little bit of extra support, you can become a patron for $1. Also, feel free to check out my Etsy store, which will be linked in the description below. I make handmade plush dolls. I have custom listings where you can request any character from any media, and I will make them. There's also a supersized option, and I also make lavender drawstring bags, purses and pouches, hanging decorative plushies, and keyrings. The example above is Isaac from the game series The Binding of Isaac. He's available in my store too. I hope you guys enjoy the video.
Hello, I wanted to jump on before I started posting videos again to acknowledge what's been going on with Shane and Shane's past.
A lot of people bring up this point, Shane's past, things that happened 10 years ago with Shane. What about what he's doing currently, or what has done in the recent past? Is no one going to talk about that?
And I didn't initially jump in and insert myself because I didn't want to add to the intense negativity that was circulating about all of these old clips.
But you did jump in and spread negativity when responding to Tati Westbrook's video. Just going on and on about how she's manipulative and deflecting onto her. Do I think that Tati's video was 100% truthful? No, but I do think it's strange that she had a legal team go over her statement, which implies that if she did say anything that was slanderous or incorrect, they would have pointed that out to her. This is you jumping in really quickly on a really serious situation, which is recent. So why you had to sit back and think about those videos that were 5, 7, 10 years old is beyond me.
And I wanted to process and think for myself. And I know I didn't do that in the beauty community drama, but I feel that's because I was kind of there for the whole experience.
I swear to God, if someone from this group doesn't come out with a full statement of what was said, what wasn't said, with receipts, and with Shane coming out saying whether or not he does in fact believe that James isn't undesirable, without skating around the topic, I will scream.
Whereas with Shane's past, I've been with Shane for 4 years, and a lot of these clips date 7, 8 to 10 years ago. And I understand that Shane's made highly insensitive and offensive jokes, and I know that while they were far in his past, it's hard to separate that person from who he is today, especially when you're seeing them in real time and your feelings are being hurt right now. And I can never take that away from you, and I would never say you have to accept his apology or even ask that you do.
I have two problems. The first one is Shane apologising for the things he's done in his past. Shane hasn't apologised for the majority of the things that he's done in his past. When you are apologising for portraying certain racial groups in insensitive and offensive ways, you can't just sum up your entire apology to be, if I offended anyone of any ethnicity and race, I'm sorry, because that doesn't show growth. The growth that Shane's fans are insisting that he has in fact gone through. I talked about this in my previous video about Shane Dawson, however, I'm going to speak about it again. You can't just punch 10 people in the face, apologise specifically to one, and expect the other 9 people to forgive you as well. He spoke mostly about blackface, and he apologised for that, and that's up to black people to either accept or reject his apology, but he missed out any insulting caricatures of Asian people, specifically Chinese or Japanese people. He didn't speak about the anti-Semitic cartoons or comments that he made. Yellowface has a long history, as does anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism stems back about 1,000 years. So how am I supposed to accept the fact that Shane has learnt why it's wrong and has grown from it when he hasn't acknowledged that he did it in the first place, only waved it away with a generalised apology? The process of growing means acknowledgement, understanding of why that thing or that joke or that cartoon or that skit was wrong, and then not doing it again. And while he might not have done those things again, he still hasn't communicated to the audience that he's learnt why it's wrong in the first place. A common rebuttal to this is that Shane can't remember every single comment or skit that he's ever done in his entire YouTube career. But on the other hand to that is, how can he grow from that if he doesn't remember the original offensive content? The second part and the second problem I have with this is the things that Shane has done in more recent years. The Jake Paul documentary that highly stigmatised antisocial personality disorder was in 2018, where he teamed up with Katie Morton, who is a therapist, not a psychologist, not a psychiatrist, a therapist, who didn't mention the diagnostic problems in the process of diagnosing antisocial personality disorder, which is something I talked about in my most misunderstood mental illnesses, antisocial personality disorder. And to wrap it up in a nutshell, most of these diagnoses take place in prison when people have already committed crimes, which overrepresents them in those prison populations and makes all people with antisocial personality disorder appear to be malicious or sadistic or people who just want to hurt others. Shane further stigmatizes this as he plays scary music when talking about sociopaths and when she's reading out the diagnostic criteria for sociopaths. I will never forget that one scene where he walks out and I think they're outside a pub or something, and he points and goes, 1 in 100, there could be 1 in there, which isn't the most stigmatizing thing I've ever heard about antisocial personality disorder ever uttered, ever. He only talks about how scary people with antisocial personality disorder are, and not that it can be treated. It's never mentioned that antisocial personality disorder is a spectrum of being able to feel emotions. It's never mentioned that there can be treatments to help them cope. Not once. I also find it highly ironic that after all of this, a day ago, Morgan Adams, who is Ryland's sister and therefore Shane's future sister-in-law, tweeted out this. Why is it that people on the internet are mental health activists and make mild forms of depression/anxiety trendy, but when someone shows signs of a mental illness, like BPD, PTSD, bipolar, they are crazy/an awful person/cancelled/underserving of compassion? Shane's entire brand is, I'm depressed and anxious, ooh, have I mentioned I'm depressed today? Ooh, I'm very anxious and sensitive, ooh. And then he made the antisocial personality disorder/sociopathy documentary. I don't mind Morgan. I've never really watched any of her content. She seems like a sweet and genuine girl with good intentions. But this lack of self-awareness regarding the people around her was just too good not to mention. Another problem surrounding Shane and the mental health topic is the video that he made on Eugenia Cooney, where again, he involves Katie Morton, who was well aware of what happened with Eugenia. The fact that Jacqueline Glenn had previously reached out to Katie Morton and Katie herself was the one who recommended a 5150 for Eugenia, and I'm finding it hard to believe that Shane didn't know about this, considering his communications with Katie and then also being with Eugenia and how Eugenia opened up to him. Behind the scenes, I'm finding it hard to believe that Eugenia didn't divulge what happened between her and Jacqueline, and I'm finding it hard to believe also that Katie didn't divulge her involvement in it. I don't like the way that he did a fluff piece on recovery of EDs, because in all the research I've done within my own degree and in my own time, it's well known that recovery from EDs is a fluid process, and it's a long, winding road with many twists and not a straightforward path. There's many different things that can occur, that can hinder, it can stagnate recovery, and people can even relapse, and that wasn't mentioned either. Shane doesn't do the research into mental illness and how he should talk about mental illness, and instead brings on people he thinks will boost his own credibility. Unfortunately, Katie is not one of those people, and I might make a video on her later, because, ooh. So, to sum up that first part, mental illness and Shane Dawson shouldn't be talked about in the same sentence unless he's talking about his own experiences. He doesn't know what he's talking about, and he'll bring on people that he thinks know what they're talking about when they don't have the credentials to talk about what they're talking about and practice what they're practicing. For example, in the antisocial personality disorder documentary, he brought on Katie to covertly analyze Jake, which is so unethical, I can't even begin to explain how bad that is. Another part of Shane is that I think his persona is inherently deceptive. He pulls this, I'm really poor, and look at me guys, I'm really poor persona for some reason. Like, every other scene in his documentaries with Jeffrey is like, oh, I'm so poor. And I guess you could argue that in comparison to Jeffree Star, he's poor, but let's be honest, he's a millionaire. And I think this is an attempt to be more relatable to his young audience who watch him, who don't have that much money, but it comes off as disingenuous as hell to me. We can argue all day as to how real Shane Dawson is on camera, but we can in fact agree that categorically speaking, he is not poor by any stretch of the imagination. And then another problem with Shane is his inability and unwillingness to directly respond to the James Charles controversy. When your BFF-like family Jeffree Star says that he's a danger to society and you won't say whether or not you believe he's an undesirable, that perpetuates the problem that we're having. The uncertainty, the speculation. That alone can still ruin someone's life and will continue to haunt James probably for the rest of his life, unless you are direct about it, in which Shane will not be.
At some point, I hope we can champion change and growth over canceling someone altogether or going for the absolute worst on the internet. And I say this because I know that Shane has had to address his past more than most people, probably in the world.
More than most people because he's done more than most people, and probably in the world is a bit of a hyperbole.
Because every few years it comes back up to ruin him, to cancel him, and it's forced him to look into what he did, its impact, how it made people feel, and really truly grow from that.
Refer back to my part about having to understand why things were wrong and how we need evidence to suggest that Shane knows why these things are wrong in order for the growth to take place.
And I think if you've been watching Shane for a long time, you've experienced his growth and you know that he is a genuine person with good intentions.
Refer back to my comments about Shane's faux persona.
When I met Shane, he was still doing 5 videos a week where the premise was comedy based around building cakes out of Hostess products. And since then, he's flipped completely into more of documentaries on YouTube.
Documentaries that trivialize and stigmatize serious mental health disorders.
And in that time, he's doubled his subscribers, which I do think came as a result of him living out his healthier, more authentic self. And I know a lot of people in present day have an issue with some of the people that he chose to give a platform. And to that, I would say that everyone has something in their past they're not proud of. But I don't think that that takes away from the incredible content that he has put out over the years.
Yeah, those documentaries that trivialized and stigmatized mental health disorders, and that movie that he made that was just packed with crap. You're going to have to define over the years for me here, because we can be talking about last year and that was still pretty bad.
What I hate to see is because of something in someone's past, the result is that no one can be associated with them or like them, and we can't allow growth. Instead, we have to ruin, throw in the trash, and they can't be spoken about ever again. I'm not a person that just runs from things when it gets rocky, especially when I don't think Shane is a lot of these things that the internet is placing on him matter of fact. I've been with him for 4.5 years, and all I know is a genuine, loving, caring person, and I truly believe that that's the person he is.
And of course, he still has more learning and growing and evolving to do. We all do, and I think the amazing blessing that's coming out of 2020 is all of us really looking deep inside of ourselves admitting and addressing what we've done wrong, saying, yeah, that was up, having conversations with the people around us, and moving forward as the best people we can be.
When you're a public figure, I don't think it's enough to have conversations with the people around you. The same way that I don't think it was enough for Shane to clip in a video of a girl with antisocial personality disorder into his Jake Paul documentary and say, oh look, I acknowledge that some people have it and they're not bad, because he just put that clip in there to prove a point. I don't think that was enough acknowledgement. I think I made my points clear. A lot of the problems I have with Shane are current, they're not necessarily a decade in the past. I don't think he's acknowledged a lot of things that he should have acknowledged, and I don't think he's properly apologised for the things he needs to apologise for. Do I particularly want him to apologise for the anti-Semitic things? I'm not bothered about that. However, you can't claim that you've grown from that one specific thing that people were bothered by not addressing it. I don't want Shane cancelled, I just don't want people to keep bringing up these videos from 10 years ago as if they were just that 10 years ago, because the problems with Shane are still current. Do I expect him to be absolutely perfect in every regard? Absolutely not. But when you're talking about antisocial personality disorder, eating disorders, and trying to be a genuine role model to your audience, you need to work harder on that, because it's not just a case of, oops, I messed up. It's, oops, I stigmatized an entire group and I'm actually not being truthful about how my life really is. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. There will be some more coming up. I'm working on a spooky short story which will be illustrated by my good friend Cindy, and I hope to see you guys in that one. Bye!